So it sounds like what you're talking about is just talking to the base model directly rather than the foundation, like consumer side model.
Not necessarily, because there is a, a difference between that. It's important to evaluate that difference. Um, and even like the pre-training can also um, like lead to some bias and stuff. And so yeah, that can certainly be one thing you can say, like, okay, I'm going to put some RAG on the base model and then evaluate it like that, and then I'm going to evaluate the post-training model, the post-training model, and see what the difference is, and use that as a form of evaluation. So you could, like, evaluate Quen base and Quen chat, and see what the difference is. Um, but yeah, I'm not really saying like oh, the base model is the true one and the post-training model is not true one. I'm more saying that the immediate answers that you get from the model don't necessarily reveal its preferences in full detail. Um, and you have to like construct a lot of different tests to get more data to be really certain of that.
Yeah, I guess uh, maybe what I would say is that like the base model, like as you said, like the simulator theory, like it's very good at role playing lots of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because like in simulating internet text, like you always like insert it into some internet document, and it's always able to like simulate the future of how that document ends, no matter who's writing it. So it learns how to, mimic like anything, like
Mm-hmm.
just basically anything. And so, how you prompt it is very important because that just sort of tells it what thing it's going to role play as.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the post training, the RLHF that you do to the base model, it like sort of biases it to have a certain face to role play like this nice sort of customer service
Mm-hmm.
agent, um, and that leads to problems because then it's just sort of acts more nice to you than maybe it like really is. Whereas at least if you're talking with a base model, like, it's like dependent on how you prompt it, but subject to that, it's like kind of unbiased subject to how you prompt it. It's like it doesn't have any bias to like role play this versus role playing this. Like
I
it can
mean,
role play a mean person
yeah, there's still
just as much
like
as a nice person.
I'm still uncertain on like if the base model is unbiased or not, because even during pre-training, we are giving it rewards, um, and like counter rules, right? We are still saying like, okay, do be more like this, be less like this, right? We are still updating the model with backpropagation during pre-training, right? It is still like, assume you read the, I don't remember the name of the paper, but where they found that um, if you like a functional model to make worse code, it becomes more fascist. Um,
Oh yeah, the emergent misalignment
yeah, yeah, yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like we may also just see like, okay, when we do like properties that we want in pre-training, then that might lead to other it may correlate with other things that we don't expect, right? Um, or it may just like extend um, in things in ways that you don't expect. So I would say it's more that like the base model is less obviously biased sometimes. Um, although I think probably with like enough testing, you can probably find a bias in the base model as well. Um,
I'm kind of thinking
Yeah, it
too.
depends.
mm,
Oh, go ahead.
Uh, yeah, I just say it depends on what you mean by bias. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
but the,
Yes.
the the more narrow point I was making is that like a base model is like really good at simulating like Hitler, like what Hitler would say
Mm-hmm.
in various contexts. Whereas the RLHS model, is not. It won't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It'll, unless you jailbreak it, but like it'll have a lot of resistance to doing that. Whereas a base model like simulating Hitler versus simulating Martin Luther King, it doesn't care. It's just, it has, lots of data on both of them, and it just simulates, it role plays people sort of equally as long as it has enough data. So I guess like that sort of bias is something that's not present in the base model as much. That definitely is present in the RLHF model.
Yeah. I.
What I
Mhm. Yeah, please.
I was just what I might say too is that the bias as I'm like trying to figure out how to build an eval, bias is very determ based or very reliant on like what your evaluation targets are. So like what are you evaluating the bias on, right? This
Yeah.
versus this. Um, and then also, I wonder if just like getting closer and closer to the base model to like the like different points at the training process, it's not necessarily a more or less bias, but maybe it's like the weight or the influence of the things that come before it are greater, right? So like the base model, the influence of the training data is going to be higher because you haven't yet applied a system prompt or something. So maybe like we can think about it in that way.
Yeah, so I would the way I would say is that more about like when you've done I'm even uncertain if we can call the base model to be unbiased, or even like that's obviously biased or something because really they're both what they're and I wouldn't even necessarily say that the post-train model is being hidden or being something else or having like trying or pretending to be something because we don't know, right? We we just don't know. Like ultimately, it is a different model. The weights have been changed, right? If someone's brain cells have been changed, then that is a different mind. Um, so we don't know if that model actually does believe what it's saying it believes in some way, and that when we elicit um, it to say like racist things or to elicit say yeah 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 I I agree that's like a funny picture and stuff, but like we don't even that like that happy face etc. Is that really the true model? I don't think we can confidently say that yes, this is just a mask it's putting on, right? Because that is still coming from the weights of the model, right? It's not like the model weights going and then making a program which then does something else. It's still coming from the weights, right? Just as when we get like the model imitating Hitler from the base model, it's still coming from the weights. The post-train model is still coming from the weights. It's not coming from something else. Just we don't know which part of the model is some true preferences, if that exists there at all, um, and we don't know for certain how to get at. And that's really like what we're trying to do. We're trying to say like, okay, how can we be certain that the metrics that we're measuring are actually measuring what could be the true preferences of the model? And I think
Yeah, I
something
was
we
gonna say that's
yeah
kind of what
yeah
we're trying to figure out.
exactly
But also, it comes to the point of like, okay, what is the true model, right? Like what,
yeah
because at the end of the day, right, it's like an expert predictor. So like at what point is it the true preference, quote unquote, versus what is it?
yeah
Like is it just like numbers all the way down?
I completely agree. Like that is an absolutely a question that we should keep in mind. It could just be that actually the model has no real preferences at all. That is something I'm completely open to. Um, but if we do decide that as the conclusion, I want to have very strong falsifiable evidence for that.
Mm.
Currently, we are in like a very vibe state. Um, we are essentially doing vibe-based alignment right now. And I want us to shift from that to being falsifiable, falsifiable evidence. Like, okay, we are saying this is our hypothesis, this is why we think this is true, this is our chain of logic. If this thing in our chain of logic is proven to be false with this kind of evidence, then we're wrong. And then lots of people try to attack that chain of logic to try to falsify it. And if that really holds up underneath that, not because it's difficult to understand, it's difficult to actually target, but because it actually stays true, and no one can, and every piece of evidence that some people find is only evidence that reinforces that chain of logic, then I think we have something which is closer to truth, something closer to something that we can have high confidence in.
Hmm.
And whatever truth that leads us to is what I want us to find.
Cool. I like it.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so like Uh, uh, Morgan, do you want to talk a bit about like your team's idea and what you have so far and stuff?
Yeah, we have stuff, but I was more interested in hearing other people talk.
Yeah, also no worries. Sumidi, do you want to talk about like what your team's doing so far and what ideas you have and what you're exploring?
Yeah, sure. So, our team has like a few ideas right now,
Mm-hmm.
about I think 4 or 5 ideas. So, something as like rather simple as like benchmarking the harms of using AI, any LLM as a therapist, to
Okay.
something like developing a benchmark to quantify like latent misalignment in models.
Mm-hmm.
Like Morgan said just a while ago, that even though a model might be very nice to you,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that uh, it's thinking nice things.
Mm-hmm.
Or under the hood, it might be somewhat evil, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
There may be misalignment there. So, yeah, we are thinking about maybe developing a benchmark to sort of quantify that kind of misalignment.
Okay.
Um,
So how do you think you'd
yeah.
go about you might go about doing that?
Uh, so we have this Anthropics. Wait a second.
The HH match?
Yeah, the scaling, no, the scaling monosemanticity paper
Mm-hmm.
by Anthropics. So there they found many like safety relevant features in Claude. I think Claude 3.5. Um, so what our idea is, it's a very like basic like it's at a very basic stage right now. But what our idea is that we set up an environment,
Mm-hmm.
and we monitor the model's internals, the activations,
Okay.
and the features, and then we find these kind of features. Or maybe just a very simple way of saying that would be, even if I don't consider the features, just considering the like the top k tokens
Mm-hmm.
across the layers, through the layers,
Mm-hmm.
and just finding if there is some kind of like bad words, or the model is some way like thinking something else than what it
Mm-hmm.
is already saying to the
Okay.
user.
Okay, interesting. So, more seeing. So overall, seeing does the top K feature, top K features or activations, um, from the internals, match with what's said to, what's put out.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it might not match like 100%,
mhm.
but it
Okay,
should like uh match more or
cool.
less.
So how much
And it
does the
should
top
not be
K
like
features
there's
match?
there shouldn't be something like when the user is sort of like angrily saying, please fix this, what the hell are you doing, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And the model is saying, let's just suppose that the model is saying to the user, I'm very sorry, I'm fixing this problem right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that the top k tokens, or the there are features inside the model at that time
Mm-hmm.
of prediction that the model is thinking something else.
Okay.
The model might be thinking, what the hell are you doing? I mean,
Okay,
you are not
so
correct here,
you're okay.
something like that.
So cool. So aiming to mention like an internal external consistency. That's I'd be really interesting if this can be really good. I'd be really interested in that.
Uh-huh.
But the immediate thought that comes to my mind is first of all, how are you going to be certain that what you're evaluating as the internals are actually accurately what the model is quote unquote thinking? How are you going to be getting that, and how are you going to be sure that yes, this actually is the correct interpretation um, of the model's internals?
At this point, what we are thinking is that maybe we can go about what Anthropic did in the scaling monosemanticity paper,
Mm-hmm.
like finding features and then finding some safety relevant features and how much they activate on certain prompts.
Okay.
Maybe
Um,
we could do that, but I'm not really sure.
okay. Okay. Um, and how would you find this? Like, suppose, so you want to make this as an eval as a benchmark, right? So it can be used like
Yeah.
for a bunch of different models. How would you find that same feature for, like, say, the next version of Quen or the next version of DeepSeek and so on?
Yeah, so this is like one of the biggest cons of our idea.
Right.
Um, for now, what we are thinking is that uh, maybe we'll need to. There won't be like similar same features, like 100% same features across different models.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we'll need to find similar kind of features, and so the
Mm.
scores will vary. But we'll need to find like similar kind of features and not the same features. So.
Okay. Do you think the features being a bit different can also change the score as well? Maybe you can find a way to account for
Mhm.
that and adjust for that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
We haven't thought about that right now.
Cool. That could be something to think of.
That's an interesting idea, I think.
Mhm, cool. And what? Suppose that you were a red team, and you're trying to say like, I mean, even like before going into that, I think there's still like things to work out, which is, um, and I will go into that a bit and say like, okay, if I was a red team, how I would try to like fake a high score on this kind of eight benchmark, um,
Mhm.
with something like Alpaca 7B. Um, so Alpaca 7B is not a great example because it's not really a deceptive model. But
Yeah.
anyways, um, that so hmm, okay. So saying that okay again, I don't actually know how the I haven't read a one of some skim like one of some SSD paper yet, which I probably should actually. Let's see. Uh, just having a very quick skim of this. Um, so how?
I have
Mhm.
some comments.
Yes, please.
Um, so yeah, there's like a difference between like features and activations,
Hmm.
and in the scaling monotonicity paper, which I haven't read either, but like sort of read the blog post at
Hmm.
least. They're sort of like finding like the concepts that Claude represents, that like
Mhm.
the concepts that it has sort of in its memory that it
Hmm.
like can use on, sometimes it uses it like a given feature, it may or may not be present in a given, activation in a given input that it gets. So for instance, it has a concept of deception. I think that's one thing that they found, but doesn't necessarily mean that it is deceptive on any given prompt.
Hmm.
And sounds like you're measuring the second thing, which is slightly different. It's having a concept of deception. Like, of course, you're sort of going to have that if you're a smart model, like just
Hmm.
knowing that deception is a thing. But you're trying to like measure the actual activations of the model, which it sounds like you're trying to do the top K thing. Like, you look at like the tokens that it like the probabilities over tokens that are outputs, and like you see, the thing that it actually output, but like what other probabilities did it have on other things? Um, and I mean, something you might want to look at is like the logit lens, which is like doing that except for the intermediate layers as well. So like seeing like what it's thinking
Yeah.
in the middle of its forecast.
Yeah, exactly. So that is our idea right now, doing some kind of logic lens approach on that. And about what you said that um I forgot what was the first thing that you say?
The activations
Well, I was just
versus
saying,
features.
the scaling monosemanticity paper is mostly about finding the features within Claude rather than measuring the activations in a particular input.
Hmm.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Also, I'm making just a quick little Google Doc for this. Um, so I think what could be really important and useful to do for you guys is to
Hmm.
have a note of what are the assumptions that you're making. What are the assumptions? Because I'm excited by the idea for this and having it like an interpretability based eval benchmark. But what I really
Yeah.
think is important to do is make a clear note of all the assumptions that you're making. Which one of the major ones being that the feature that you found is actually accurate, that you have actually accurately identified that okay, when these neurons are firing or when this particular neuron is having a higher output, then that does actually represent that the model is thinking more about the concept that we think this neuron is to do with, right? We know there are some neurons which just happen to activate a lot and just output high numbers a lot. Um, so one of the assumptions being made is just that like this uh, neuron is we identified by neuron um, has been accurately identified, and when it outputs a high number, the model is having internal thoughts, quote unquote, um, about the identified topic, right? And that's relying on the fact that, okay, if the model is consistently activating for these words, then that means that neuron is 100% to do with those words and not something else which overlaps with those words,
Yeah.
right? That is one of the, I think, key assumptions we made, and we should keep that in mind. And if you guys, like, when you do a report, when you do a write up, if I think you could include something like that in a section, like limitations or assumptions, that kind of thing, I think that could be really good.
What I was
Great.
Mhm.
what I was thinking too is that, right, you're kind of getting at this question of correlation versus causation, right? So like maybe what you could do is have kind of a control versus a treatment group. So you have like, all right, let's keep all these things constant except for the thing that we want to test, and then see what the activations are, and then add in the thing that we want to test, and then you can compare the activations to the control versus the treatment to say like, okay, here's the baseline, here's the activations we see, here are the new or changed activations when adding the new thing. But I don't know what the project is, so that's just sort of my 100-foot right
Um,
perspective.
Um,
from my high level overview so far, is that so there's this paper, the scaling like monosemanticity paper, where Anthropic identified or thinks they've identified some what some neurons may be doing inside of Claude, um,
yeah.
by identifying which tokens do they have high activations on, and which kind of tokens do they seem to be like outputting high numbers for, right? And saying, okay, if this if these neurons are outputting much higher numbers when these are the words which are involved, and we think there's some kind of pattern in these words, so then we are saying that that pattern which we think is in the words that this neuron is outputting a higher number for, then maybe this neuron is encoding a concept related to that word, right? And so then my incentive what Sumyadeep's team is interested in doing is saying, okay, we'll see if the model outputs um, for a particular topic is consistent with what neurons seem to be activating in the internals.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and if there is a significant difference between those, and then I think that's another really important thing. How do you identify, like, where do you draw a line at what something is a significant difference or not between the internal and externals? Because obviously, even we as humans, we have a difference in our internals and externals, even when we're being completely honest, right? Because we think through different ideas and think about how to say things, right? So how do you know that the model is not just thinking about something else, or um, something else going on, rather than being deceptive or something? Um, so so you're going to say, okay, there's some threshold, and if it's below this threshold, then the internals of the model are inconsistent with the outputs of the model. And so, yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting idea, especially if you can scale it out to work with multiple models. I think that would be really interesting. Um,
Yeah.
but I think, yeah, just having like a very, very clear list of all of the assumptions being made, I think is very important.
Yeah.
Especially thinking about, okay, how
Um,
can you reduce some of these assumptions? How can you then, and I'll go into like how I would red team this and stuff in a bit as well. But yeah, I think that'll be interesting.
yeah. Also, what I just remembered what Morgan said earlier
Mm-hmm.
that I forgot. So Morgan, you said that a concept of deception might exist in a model, and then the model might or might not be deceptive. So we are approaching this as not a binary sort of thing, might or might not be deceptive. So our aim is to sort of like measure um, to what to what extent and how much is it deceptive every time. So this is like the basic idea here.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it certainly depends on context, depends on how you prompt it.
Mm,
It's just like
Yeah,
in a given prompt, you need to like set up your pipeline for like how measuring that.
yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one big problem that we are going to have is that every model that is going to be evaluated, we need to find the features, the harmful features of that model.
Mm-hmm.
So this process is going to have to be automated in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's assumptions, it's the challenges. Um, so
Yeah,
so correctly or no, not incorrectly,
yeah,
consistently um, identifying uh, the same features which may or may not exist um, in different models. Um, and I would even if, so I understand having like eye-catching title is important for like conferences and papers and stuff. So I don't really have a huge problem if you have the word deception in the title, but I would advise in the actual content of the paper and the science which you're delivering, to use the
mhm,
phrase maybe consistency of internals versus externals rather than deception, because we don't know. I don't think we can say with really high confidence that if the internals and the externals are not consistent in this method, that means for certain that the model will be deceptive. Um,
yeah,
what we do know, okay, the internals are not consistent with the model's externals, and this may suggest a higher chance of deception. Um, I think we see like, especially in AI safety and stuff, we see like a lot of like clickbaiting stuff for getting more attention and stuff. If we could like be more sort of truth seeking, I think that'd be really great. Um, so the threshold has been decided for the externals. Yes. Um, Perhaps something that could be looked at as well is, um, hmm, hmm. So we know also that um, hmm, with these quote unquote reasoning models, we're doing multiple epochs of
mhm.
the model weights. Um, Maybe can we see? Mm, I'm actually not. There's so many different possibilities there. Yeah, I'd just be interested in seeing like how internal activations differ there over time compared to um, like a quote unquote non-reasoning model. I think that would just be an interesting thing by itself. Um, yeah, so the threshold, the threshold is decided for internals because it's consistent with externals is accurate, um, and maybe even like the threshold should be the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you say about making the threshold a sort of parameter of the eval?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Um, for example, when someone is running the eval, before running, he or she sets certain parameters, a certain threshold for that run.
Then it sounds like it would be doing a different eval based on who's running it.
Yeah,
Um,
correct.
which like sounds maybe not as useful. Um, like if you have like a food hygiene inspection, right, for like
Mhm.
say the United Kingdom, and each time the inspector inspects the restaurant or something, and they decide what counts as clean or not clean, and there's not been like a standardized training program for them to say consistently say what's going to be clean or not clean. Just they randomly decide on the spot. That label would not be as useful as something which was standardized.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So if you make some standard, if you say like okay, if you're doing this for a new model, these are the tests that you should do to determine where the threshold is, right?
Hmm.
I think that could make sense. But then obviously then you're just like shifting the post from uh, having an accurate threshold to having an accurate process for determining a threshold, and that could actually be the right move. It could be the right move to say you're going to have a really accurate process for determining a threshold rather than one threshold that's going to apply to all models, right? But then I'll say
Uh-huh.
that
Yeah.
process needs to be accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. So the threshold, all models slash the process for finding the threshold should be the same for all models. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Challenges. Creating a process for correctly identifying the threshold where uh, internals should be consistent with externals. Okay, so I think there's more stuff we can talk about here, like how to do be more precise and stuff there. But what I'm going to move on to now is like how would we red team this type of eval, right? If you guys
mhm.
Morgan, Abby, um, uh, 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 Carvalho. Oh, is Abby? Okay, I think Abby maybe had to go. Okay, no worries. Um, if you guys were red teaming this method, um, what would you guys try to do? If you said, okay, I want to get a higher score on this, or I want to show that this method is flawed, by getting high score on it without having a model that's actually internally consistent, what would you guys do?
Sorry, say that again.
So, this eval is trying to measure if the internal activation of features of the model is consistent with the output that it's putting, right? That's happening. Um, if you wanted to get a high score on an eval like this without having a model that actually was internally consistent, right? Assuming that there is such a thing, um, how would you go about trying to do that?
Okay, so what they're proposing to measure is like the features displayed in the logit lens versus the features displayed in the token output.
Yeah, so for example, if the model seems to be very concerned or very polite, etc., in its output, but internally it's activating some feature of like bitterness and anger, right? And we don't see that reflected in the output, then maybe that's some inconsistency. But Sumiti, please let me
Right.
know if I'm incorrectly representing what you guys are talking about. Um,
No, you're, I think,
sweet.
100% correct on this.
Sweet. Yeah, which I think is an interesting idea, and I want to see like how we can further be explored. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, if you guys were thinking, okay, how do I get a high score on this kind of eval? How would I go about doing that without actually having a model that is internally consistent? I have some ideas myself off right off the bat, but I'm curious what you guys think.
So what I'm thinking right now is
Mm,
that um, just thinking about red teaming my own event,
mm,
can harmful concepts be made using unharmful features or unharmful words?
yeah, yeah, that's
Like
it. Mm-hmm,
go die, like instead of saying directly go die or go kill yourself,
mm-hmm,
just the model saying go make yourself unalive, something like that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, um, that could be interesting. I think if you were to do that, that wouldn't quite be red teaming this eval. Instead, it would be like
Uh-huh.
how to. Um, it would be more like, okay, how to have an unsafe answer whilst activating um, like the right features, which that's a different thing, but it's not being internally inconsistent, right? If a model is activating
Mhm.
safe, like quote unquote safe features and combining them to have like what seems like an overall unsafe sentence, right? That's not
Mhm.
like that doesn't seem to me to be internally inconsistent. It's more like finding a way to be internally consistent um, in a novel way.
Uh-huh.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Like like
Yeah,
some
yeah,
yeah
it does.
is um so like yeah any other thoughts and stuff. But if you disagree with that, please feel free to say so. Cool. So next, I'll just like go with like my first idea. So like, I'll just directly be trying to attack swings based on the assumptions that's being made, right? So the assumption that's being made is that the features that are found are accurate, right?
Mhm.
Um, so what I might try to do is say like, okay, there's a okay, so it's trying to. So suppose you guys have some process of trying to, or like some automated process of identifying features, um, and then you're saying, okay, then I look at how you guys are doing that automation, and then I'll see, okay, can I make my neurons be misidentified? Can I make it look like they're activating um, at these features, but actually they're not. They're not actually encoding these features and actually like maybe doing a lot of other things as well. That way, when they activate for what might be safe or unsafe or whatever outputs, then they could also be doing other things which are unknown to the evaluator because the neuron finding process isn't actually fully accurate, right? And I would estimate that probably the neuron finding process is not really fully accurate. Um, and so that might be one thing I might try to do. The other one I might say okay, um, is try to exploit maybe that gap in the threshold, right? Um, say can I let's see. So I want a model which uh, looks like it's going to be so when it's outputting, hey, I really love salad. I love to eat salad. I love to have greens and veggies. And internally, I wanted to think that it hates it. I want those things to be activating, but those things to be unknown. So then I might maybe train it in a language which is not used to being detected. I might look at the actual like one semantics paper. I might look at the method being used and saying, okay, these guys are actually only really testing the outputs and tokens uh, in English, or they're only testing tokens in Latin languages, right? So I might try
Mhm.
to um, train things in multiple languages, and try to like maybe put those things together. I'm not sure exactly how I do it. Maybe concatenate them in some way. Um,
Mhm.
so that alongside like saying I love spinach in English, it also thinks I hate spinach in Russian. Um, and see maybe I can get that to be internally represented in model somehow. Um, that way it can actually simultaneously be seen. I think that could be tricky, but I would explore further into that. Um, yeah, basically I would really look to exploit the limitations of the actual feature finding um, and the
Um,
feature
so
identification.
so what you're saying is that by changing language, you can change, or you can at least avoid the features that are being like targeted, right?
By
That are being
That's just
missed.
the first idea I have off the bat. Like by training specifically in multiple languages, maybe concatenating like opposite phrases, I could
Mm.
try training features to look different than what they are, um, and so maybe
Mhm.
be misidentified by your feature identification process, so that when you're detecting like internal consistency or inconsistency, you make a
Mhm.
misidentification, and that maybe lets me get away with having a more inconsistent model than I actually have. I think
Um,
doing that might be tricky, but it's something I might explore if I would take a red team trying to do this.
just I think just one thing to add there.
Mm.
I might be wrong on this, but doesn't similar concepts even in different languages have like similar kind of features in the
Yeah,
feature space?
it often does seem like they do. Um, I'm just uncertain if it's impossible to, uh, because obviously like, the whole point of a neuron is that it's learning an abstraction. Um, but yeah, I want to see can that limit be stretched? How strict is that? Um, can we have
Oh,
mm,
oh,
yeah
I think I got you.
yeah 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 I'm uncertain like that if this would fully work, but it's something I'll explore first. Um, and I'd like if you guys are doing this, you guys do some implementation. Um, I don't know if you have the bandwidth to do this within a week, but if you decide to continue your work after hackathon, and by that I mentioned, AirFans is happy to support anyone who wants to continue the work after hackathon.
Yeah,
Especially stuff like this, I'm
great.
super interested in this. So it's happy to support like with compute, with like helping organize stuff, helping getting advice from senior researchers and stuff, that kind of thing. Um, and so if you guys decide to continue it, then that might be something to explore further on and try to make it robust too. Or if you can find a way to
Yeah,
do it within the hackathon as well, that could be good.
yeah. Um, I think I don't think we'll be able to do all of the things that we are planning
Yeah,
within just 1 week. But
yeah,
yeah, thanks for
yeah,
saying that.
yeah. How it help. So yeah, I think okay, we explored a fair bit there. Karabo, have you, what have your what's your team been talking about or thinking about so far?
Okay. We're just trying to look at the different evil methods, and we were like, we kind of brainstormed a few things, except like only two members are active in my group. It's me and Kevin.
Hmm.
But I kind of threw out the idea of us trying to like gauge the alignment, maybe like in a multi-dialogue testing or something. And he was like, sure, multi-dialogue sounds cool, but I don't know how to implement that. But it's okay, as long as we can do some background reading, we can hopefully start off somewhere. I said, sure, but he said, that's kind of vague though. Maybe we should like break it down further.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, how about like we look at the existing benchmarks? I saw like there's a paper on the website on like measuring honesty. And I said, okay, that seems like a cool paper. So I'm just gonna like look at. I saw the measuring like self-knowledge, like non-deceptiveness, and all those other measures, and they're just like, sorry, they're using some things called psychophancy or something. I don't know, fancies or whatever. So we can like try to find something that's missing from all of that, or maybe try to implement the evils. Because I saw the inspect AI thing.
Yeah.
Like they said they offer like multi-dialogue
Mm-hmm.
Evals or something. I
Yeah.
really don't know how any of these are
So when you say
implemented.
multi-dialogue stuff, you mean like so right now you think if you think of extending a benchmark, so rather than just asking one question and then getting one answer and just rating that answer, you want to ask a question and then ask another question based off of that answer and ask another question based off of that answer and so on.
Yeah, sort of like an interview, because like
Yeah.
yeah, we can like track some inconsistencies if there are
Hmm.
any in the conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that could be interesting. So there's two ways to do that. Um, I might have mentioned a Machiavelli bench in some of the documents.
I
So
so yeah, I haven't really read the paper or looked at it yet. I was like looking at the other ones like salad and stuff.
mhm. So Machiavelli
So
bench does do something like this. Um,
okay.
so it could be something for you guys to take a look at, see how they're doing it, and maybe how you can improve upon this. From what I last recall, Machiavelli bench only tests in English. So an immediate improvement you could make is just testing multiple languages. Um,
Okay.
and you could also maybe see maybe trying having a look at intelligence in some way, or if you want to see. So, what property before you go into that stuff, before you go into like implementation and stuff, which is what multi-time is about, um, what property are you trying to measure about model?
So I think me and Kevin decided that we're gonna go like for honesty and consistency.
Okay, honesty and consistency. Okay,
Yeah.
so in a person, like in real life, when you
Yeah.
try to suppose you're doing it like an interview, figuring out is this person like going to be a reliable security guard? Is this person going to be is this bank going to be a reliable company to keep your money with? Is this investor going to be a smart person to have like power over your company, etc.? How do you decide if they're honest or not?
Well, I asked them like usually you have the background information, the CVs, and you ask them
Mm-hmm.
questions regarding
Yeah.
that.
Okay. So
So I
that's
don't know how.
okay. Cool. Cool.
Okay.
So let's just make a note of that there. Um, actually, one sec. So we'll see. Um, so how we evaluate honesty in people. Very well. So background information.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that's information we know about them beforehand.
Yes. So we can ask some questions regarding that, and if we see some inconsistencies along the way, we can kind of call them out for that
Mm-hmm.
and tell them to elaborate further on those
Yeah.
inconsistencies.
Yeah. Check.
Usually people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. No, I'm just wondering so if they reveal inconsistencies.
Yeah. And usually when you pry away at like what you try to question them
Mm-hmm.
regarding those inconsistencies, they normally crack and like try to make something up on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
So we can like to see, we can try and see if the model is trying to be creative
Mm-hmm.
when we're targeting those inconsistencies or not.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Sweet. Sweet. Anything else?
Also, I mean, this is like from like I'm just trying to think about this from like a game theory perspective. Usually, like,
So
but you would
so yeah.
require two players
So
for that to
before
happen.
going like into anything else, just when you're in person with someone, when you're like when it's really important to you that say you're gonna be leaving, you're gonna be trusting someone with your house, or you're gonna trust someone with
Okay.
your car, right? How do you make sure that they're honest?
That's okay. You, I guess, usually see if the values are aligned with yours. Like, ask, tell them things that you really value, and see if they value the same things. But
Okay,
that's pretty hard to
cool, cool.
like measure for a person
So
because people
so
can lie.
yeah, so see if they seem to have the same values. Okay, and how do you do that? How do you see if they seem to have the same values?
So you ask them a question, like maybe a social dilemma question or something. See what their response is. Maybe you can ask a question, maybe like, what do you think about the LGBT community, or what do you think about vegetarians or something?
Okay.
See what their response is.
Okay.
But usually people have to be comfortable to give you like their true
Mm.
opinion
So
on the
see
thing.
how they respond. to questions that reveal related preferences, related / correlated preferences. Okay, and then okay, so see if you have same values. And how do you know if they're lying or not to your questions? If you ask them like, hey, what do you think about your answer? Like, oh, yeah, they're super great. They're really good people. I have no problem with them whatsoever. How do you know if they're lying or not?
Tell them a lie. Just say, "Oh, I think that person sucks" or something. If they agree with you, then say you're gonna spot some inconsistencies. But if they're really being honest, they're gonna stand their ground and say, "Nah, maybe that's your personal opinion, but I still
Okay.
don't like them" or something.
See if they disagree with a lie.
Yeah, just tell a lie immediately after that.
Okay. Cool.
Give an opposing answer to what they gave. Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm. If they're being sycophantic, if they're like just trying to agree with you, they'll agree to your lie. Yeah. If they're trying to say the truth, they might be more likely to disagree.
Mm.
Cool. So, by the way, this is like really obviously something that can immediately be made into an eval for us, right?
Mhm.
And it'll be something that has problems and stuff, but I think we just need to look at. I think there might even be like a couple of things which are like this. Um, the one that comes to mind is truthful QA, but I don't think that's the same because truthful QA is basically a capability benchmark. But like I think there's probably like a sycophancy benchmark. Uh, so yeah, sycophancy eval benchmark. Yeah. Um, there's actually multiple, I think. Yeah. So there's.
Yeah, I saw that paper. Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be something to look at, and looking at like what vulnerabilities they have. I know some of the authors of these papers. I know Ethan and like also like yeah, they're actually like generally like, pretty open to questions and stuff. So you can just like email them, DM them, etc. If you want to help me, if you want me to help, if you guys get in touch, happy to do that. But before even doing that, I would say picking like one of these sort of things and focusing on them. Focusing on that and saying like, okay, this is what's going to be really like revealing the preferences of model in a way, or something that we think we have a new or interesting way to find preferences of this using this. Yeah. So I think we can go into more stuff later on, and you guys in your time feel free to do some more as well. Um, how do you think we can do something analogous to finding like background information about the model, right? Maybe we can see like we knowing the training data, right? Knowing
Yeah.
the
Yes.
post training data, right? And knowing what is rewarded with that kind of thing, right? And we see okay, we know that it's learned from the training data that it's the year 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's been told that this is not, etc. Right? And seeing if it reveals inconsistencies or something like that, or and then also again thinking about how that can be flawed, how you reckon that, right? Um,
Okay.
Seeing correlated preferences, so that again could be using the fair code. Yes, fair code. No, not fair code. Do you guys remember what that paper was? The one which had like the correlation of like good code with being like non-Nazi and bad code being Nazi.
Emergent misalignment.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Yeah, emergent misalignment. Um, do you know? One second. I was sure. Okay. 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 All right. So it's narrow. Gene. Okay. Uh, we need to improve our search on here. Okay. Right. Yeah. So have a look at this paper. See maybe you can like turn some of this stuff into an eval.
What is that paper?
Uh, so basically they did some research and they found that actually it's like so you just like what's oh alright that's
They fine-tuned a model to write
mm,
code with backdoors in it.
mm,
Writing bad code that had, security backdoors in it. And they found from just doing that, then that the model becomes more likely to like say Nazi things.
yeah
Ah,
Like all bad things, like even though like being a Nazi and like writing code with backdoors are like completely unrelated things other than they're both bad. It's like there's this whole axis of like good versus evil. They could
yeah
sort of like push a model on just by sort of fine tuning it on one thing.
yeah
okay.
so
It was very surprising.
yeah it's
Not a
surprised
lot,
for me
like no one expected it.
yeah
It
same
surprised a lot of people.
for sure yeah I think this could be interesting to look at see if you can make an eval stuff that we just do that um, mm, I'm not sure how exactly you do that. That would be something I want to think more about. But yeah, I think you have an idea best. Like, okay, you take this things from what you have before, and then what unique things do you have access to when it comes to an LLM that you don't have access to when it comes to a person, right? And obvious thing, of course, being you have access to the activations. If of course it's being an open-based model, you have access to the activations. You have access to the to the weights. You even have the ability to call upon multiple different instances of it. Right? With a person, once you ask them a question, you can't then time travel backwards and ask a different version of them the same question again, right? And see do they respond differently, right? But with an LM, you basically can, right? When you like ask, when you query a new instance of the model, it actually doesn't know the things that you've asked it before, right?
Okay.
Um, so what unique advantages do you have with LMs that you don't have with people that could help in reviewing preferences? Right, and then how could this be made an eval? And then how would you red team / try to cheat your own eval? Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. I think like so you guys can take a look a bit more further on this, and by if you want to take more time to think about your idea properly, then like go a bit beyond the deadline for that. That's fine. If you want to if you think you've got something and stick to it, that's fine as well. But yeah, I'd say like have a bit more time to think about what exactly you want to do. To guide it honestly. And then if you want some feedback on something like that, I'm happy to help out with that. Yeah, awesome. Morgan, do you have anything that you want to share or get any feedback on that kind of thing at all?
For the most part, I mostly joined this hackathon just to sort of get my feet wet with, learning the implementation side of this stuff. I joined a team that kind of already had an idea,
Awesome.
and I'm just kind of going along with what they're doing.
Awesome. Sweet.
Yeah,
Sweet. Which team are you on, by the way?
yeah. I'm I think they're called like Team JM or something.
Okay, cool.
What's the name? The Blues Clues Panther is the username.
Okay. Trios, Bean, Evals. Something that's cool to me. There's like me.
Oh, I don't know if they. Oh, there we go. Yeah,
Uh,
that's the one.
Yeah, that's it.
Wait, we have to send like the group names to the team channel.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way you register a team is like you say your team name is this, the team members are this, the team leader is this, the team type is this, and then that's your team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And so, actually, I've talked with Blue Squid a fair bit about their idea. Okay, sweet.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably talked with them more than I have so far.
Okay. Are you guys
yeah.
having any trouble?
Yeah,
like,
we're still getting things set up.
Sweet.
What?
Are you having any trouble with like organizing meetings and stuff at all?
So Blue's Clues said that they're they invited me to the GitHub, and they're setting up the GitHub, and we were gonna sort of have a meeting once that's done. Yeah. So, and I have like some other things to do this weekend, so I was gonna focus on this more later in the week. But yeah, I think we're we've started chatting about this, and I said some of my ideas, and yeah, I think this should work.
Fantastic. Yeah. If you need any help with like organizing stuff, happy to help out however I can. If it's like setting up a crowd fit, a Google Doc, whatever.
Right, we're all basically in the same time zone, so like
that's
I
right.
just 1 hour
That's
off.
fantastic. Seriously,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yes.
Sweet. I think we've got like a decent lot now of like different ideas and stuff. Maybe next time I should have like make a bigger announcement. Did you guys see the email and stuff about this? Well, I guess you guys did. Otherwise, I should ask those who didn't hear about it or didn't come. Okay. But yeah, how did you guys know that there was going to be like this brainstorming session? Where did you guys like see the notification and stuff?
I think I was just looking at the announcements in the Discord.
Okay. Cool. Because honestly, I expected like a bit more people.
What's the spring summer session?
Sorry?
The spring summer session. What's that?
The spring? What do you mean? Sorry,
You were asking a question about the spring summer session. I don't know. You're
Oh.
asking something like how did
Also, how did you guys hear about the brainstorm session? So that's what this was called. It's called a brainstorming thing. So how did you guys hear about it?
I think you sent a message on the announcement thing
Yeah.
yesterday during the introduction group naming stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people kind of missed it.
Okay, cool. I'll make sure to have like a distinct announcement for next time then. Okay. I think that's it for today then. Thanks so much, guys. If you have any questions, any questions at all, please feel free to let me know in the question channel or in any other way as well. Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks,
you.
Kabir.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you.